subject, but cori could be the subject because it's nominative plural, so maybe that's the subject. Day. About. Billow. War.
Of something.
Okay? So, what word do we think, and again, you don't always have to have a subject. The subject could be implied by the verb. The subject could just be there were or they were. What word in this sentence do we think might be the subject? Cori. Okay? And so, feminis, do we think that's going to be ablative or dative?
Dative.
Well, if it's ablative, we'd say with the women, and if it's dative, it'd be for the women or to the women. So let's start. Cares were, well, maybe not cares were, cares de bello.
Cares of war?
Cares
Cares
about
about
war.
war?
Parent feminis.
Were with the women.
We're from the women.
Those are good guesses,
The
but
concern about the war was concerning the women.
what if we do go ahead and translate this as there were?
The woman's
Concern
concern
was
was
about the war.
Okay, well that's probably good. That's probably an okay translation, but let's make sure that we understand. In your translation, you didn't make feminis dative.
And it wasn't, and then feminist became the subject.
Well, it actually became, in their sentence, it became genitive. The women's cares were about the war, which is actually very close to the meaning of this. But if this is dative, what kind of dative is it?
Oh, mean.
There is no dative.
No.
Dative of accompaniment.
There's no dative of accompaniment.
Wait, man.
Dative of possession.
Dative of possession. And what does dative of possession mean?
The women possess.
Oh,
the
the cares about war were for the women.
Yeah, okay, so there's different ways we can translate this. The one that's the most literal, the cares about the war were for the women. That's the most literal, and it shows that you really know what's going on. The other way you can translate dative of possession is you can say, the women had cares about the war. And that's an okay translation, but notice it doesn't show for sure that you know that that's dative. It's fine, but if I have this sentence on a test and you translated the women had cares about the war, that's fine. And then if I say what case is feminis and why, you'd have to say dative of possession. As long as you knew that, that would be okay. Yeah.
Russian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Et enum. Now this is a new word. What does it mean?
In fact.
In fact. Kuros. What case is kuros?
Accusative plural.
Accusative plural, so it's probably
No direct object.
direct object. Feminarum.
That would be genitive plural.
Genitive plural. Enemo.
Dative or ablative singular.
Yeah, dative or ablative singular. Notice we haven't had a nominative yet. And we're all the way at the end of the sentence. We've got the verb now. So where are we going to find out who the subject is?
In the last
In
sentence.
the verb. So kagitabam. And so kagitabam,
I was thinking.
I was thinking. So, or I was considering. And that's where we find the subject because of the bomb ending. So,
In fact, I was thinking about wait.
maybe use considering. I was considering.
In fact, I was considering
The direct object.
the cares of the
Anima.
women's lives.
Nah, what are we going to do with anima? You got everything right up to that point. In fact, I was considering, or I was thinking about the cares of the women. So the women up here, they had their cares. Well, and I was thinking about them. I was considering the cares of the women. Animo. We said animo could be dative or ablative. So dative, for my mind, to my mind, with my mind?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of ablative is that?
Me?
Means.
But do you think with anything else?
This animus is your logical mind,
Okay.
and anima is your more spiritual,
Solely.
and this is more your rational mind. So in Latin, you could think of either one.
That's interesting.
It also, I could consider this I could consider this, y'all can't, I could consider this as ablative of place where. Now, why am I saying I can consider it that way and y'all can't?
Because it would
Because
confuse
we
the
don't
crap
know
out of
about
them.
it.
Well, you know about ablative of place where, but
Well, like-
what do you always have with ablative of place where?
The whole.
N.
In,
Yeah.
yeah, and there's no in here. And so y'all don't know that you might maybe think of it as ablative of place where.
So I was thinking about the cares of the women in my mind.
Right. And although you would think, where else would you be thinking about them? That's a very Latin-y thing to do, is to, to be redundant. In Latin, a lot of times you will sing songs, you will speak spoken things, you will, and the words in Latin are the same. They're the same words. You'll cry tears, but in Latin it'll be like you are tearing tears, and so that's a very very common.
It's really
Okay.
odd.
Number 8. Could I have a volunteer to read number 8? Yes, thank you, Chip.
Facta, nautarum, cogitamus, period, fauna, enium, erit, natis.
Okay, this one is not that dissimilar from what we just did. Okay, so facta, when we see facta, what is that?
Deed,
Is it a singular deed?
Deeds.
Okay, in what case could it be?
Nominative, plural, or dative.
Nope,
Accusative singular.
nope.
Accusative plural.
Accusative plural. Nominative plural, accusative plural. So deeds. Deeds are either doing something or having something done to them. Now tarum.
Genitive plural.
So probably deeds of the sailors. Cogitamus.
we ponder.
We ponder, we think, not were, we are. Because it's what tense?
I know it equals we ponder.
Present. Present. Okay, so we ponder, well, what's the subject? We, so what case is facta?
Accusative.
Accusative. So we ponder the deeds of the sailors, or we think about the deeds of the sailors. So that one, that's a pretty straightforward sentence. That's a kind of sentence that I would feel comfortable giving you on the test, even if it was not one that you had seen before.
The next
Now,
one confuses me.
next one is not so bad. Once we get used to this, it has a dative construction in it that's not like anything we use in English. Yes?
When we use inium, it usually comes at the beginning. Right?
In English it does,
Okay.
but in Latin it doesn't. And so we usually put it at the beginning, even though in Latin we don't. Okay? So this next one, fama, what case is that?
Singular, present singular, like,
Present's not a case.
sorry.
Nominative.
Nominative, that's what you're thinking
yes,
of. Yeah.
I was thinking
Nominative.
like, the original one. So.
Could it? Yeah, right. Could it be ablative?
Sure.
No, because it doesn't have the long mark.
Because it doesn't have the long mark. Doesn't have the long mark. Could it be vocative?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it could. But if it was vocative, we'd probably have a comma
Comma.
after it.
Yeah.
Okay, so probably nominative, fama, and then anum, and that doesn't have any other forms. It just is what it is, and what it is.
What did he eat?
Indeed. Okay, erit.
Third person future
Uh-huh.
singular.
Yeah, third person future singular. By the way, some of you are really good with when I point to something, you can say all the things it can be, and that's great. If you can't do that, you need to go back and review those forms, because that's going to be the number one thing that'll help you translate sentences. So some of you know it and you're just not saying it. Some of you aren't saying it because you don't remember. And if you don't remember, you really need to go back and into the paradigm section of your notebook, all your noun forms, all your verb forms, you got to know all of this.
So are desperately trying to know them.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, just as long as you continue studying. So third person singular future of sum, which would be translated.
So he, she, it will be.
And what's the other way you can translate it?
There will be.
There will be. Okay? So we got all of those things. So it makes sense. Fame will be. Indeed, fame will be. Now tease. What would now
To the
tease?
sailors, from the sailors, ubiquity, preposition.
Okay, so which one is it going to be here?
I think for the sailors.
For the sailors, and that would make it what kind of dative?
Dative of possession.
Dative of possession. Indeed, there will be fame for the sailors. That's dative of possession.
do, they'll be paid for the sailors indeed, right?
You could, indeed.
So ad interim is in fact and interim is indeed.
Yeah, there are some words in Latin that I just kind of translate however, indeed, for, in fact, and I just...
Indeed, in fact, I'm looking
And
at
et anum is really et anum. I mean, they're almost the same word. So,
Doesn't really matter which one.
not
And indeed.
not her. Now, there are some people who are very concerned about the meanings of these words. I just did not know. Her Italia Wela Debat. Non-Italia era patria polita.
Why in the 74 and 75 when they did the question, they start with the first word ends in ne, I think.
Yeah, because that's how you ask a question.
And how come so?
Because you don't have to start a question that way, especially if you use what I like to call a question word. And a question word is a word like why or how or when. And so when you start with a question word, you don't use ne.
But when you start with a regular word, you
Use ne. And then usually when you use ne, you will start you'll start the sentence with the verb, and you'll put the ne at the end of the verb, but not always. And just like with regular sentences, the word that starts the sentence has extra emphasis. Just with questions, a lot of times it's the verb. And we kind of do the same thing a little bit in English. When we ask a question, a lot of times our questions are made up of verbs that have helping verbs, like, do you want to learn Latin? Of course you want to learn
Do
Latin.
want.
Do want is our verb, and we start with the question with the word do, which is part of the verb. Will you do your homework tonight? Of course you will. But the homework is will do. And so, it kind of makes sense to start a question with the verb, because usually what you're asking is this verby thing going to happen? Sometimes the question is going to be more about a noun. Like, for instance, I know Cole has a nice present. Okay. I know he does. And so I'm just curious what it is. And I might say,
The book.
Cole, is your present for money? Now, in Latin, I would probably put the word money at the beginning of the sentence because that's the thing I'm really questioning. So, pecunia ne or pecuniam ne, depending on how I'm phrasing this sentence.
Non-orum.
You don't have gold for me?
No, it's gold.
Oh, no gold. Oh, good. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so, cur ab Italia vela dabat. Well, I read this sentence, and when I read it, one of the things that strikes me is this word vela, and I remember way back in the back of my head somewhere that it means sail, and then I also remembered, well, when I had to learn these vocabulary words, there was a special meaning for velum dare, and velum dare meant
Set sail.
to set sail, and sure enough, I've got a vela here, and I've got a form of dare, so setting sail is going to, you don't remember that? Yeah, it's a good idea every now and then,
To just review.
to go to, and that's one of the reasons I have you make these vocabulary pages. Now, obviously, there's some words that we
I
haven't
think
put
I'll
in
do
there.
that over Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I was going to say, just spend a little bit of time looking at the words because you've already studied them. It won't take you that long to remember them and just kind of review them.
It's funny, of all the things that I've forgotten, I remember that quite well.
I
So
remember
he's
I don't know why.
You remember that one
The
too?
one thing that I'll
I
always
remember
remember when
that one
someone
because I forgot
says
the meaning for whale on
the
the test.
buenas dare, like yesterday he said, oh, that means to set sail, or I'm like, no, that means to pay the punishment.
Yep, it sure does, and that was the other idiom. Because someone asked, what is poenas at the beginning of this class, and that's where
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that we've got something to do with setting sail. We know cur is why. If we don't know that cur is why, we need to learn that cur is why. Ab Italia, that's a nice little phrase, pretty easy to translate. What is ab Italia?
By Italy.
Could be by Italy, but we have to be careful. When ab means by, it doesn't mean by as in next to. It means by as in done by someone. And so that's probably not what this means here. It's probably not that Italy
Set sail.
Word Italy.
Italy set sail for America.
From Italy.
from Italy.
Italy, the peninsula,
Why
disattached
did
itself
you
from
say-
Europe and started floating around the Mediterranean.
Well,
Why was
no.
he setting sail from Italy?
Very good. Why was he setting sail from Italy?